Remember those tiny quintuplets who made headlines 13 years ago? 5 little miracles who fought against all odds? Well, you won't believe how they've grown up. Their journey from fragile newborns to amazing teenagers will leave you speechless. Varvara Artemkina's life had changed forever. At just 26 weeks pregnant, she was carrying not 1 but 5 precious lives inside her. She had no idea that her world was about to be turned upside down. The journey had begun months earlier during a routine ultrasound. The technician's eyes widened in disbelief as she moved the wand across Varvara's belly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 distinct heartbeats appeared on the screen. The doctors were stunned when they first saw 5 embryos on ultrasound, a truly unique event. Varvara and her husband, Dmitry, were overwhelmed with a mix of joy and fear. It is challenging to carry such a multiple pregnancy. First of all, a colossal burden falls on the woman's body. The expectant mother was offered to keep only 3 babies so that her pregnancy would be less risky. But after much soul-searching and prayer, the couple decided to proceed with all 5. The following months were a whirlwind of medical appointments, careful monitoring, and preparations for their suddenly expanding family. Varvara's body changed rapidly, her petite frame straining under the weight of 5 growing babies. Despite the challenges, she remained determined to carry her quintuplets as long as possible. On a Tuesday morning, a sharp, sudden pain shot through Varvara's body, causing her to freeze in panic. Her hand instinctively flew to her swollen belly as the realization dawned. Something was wrong. It was far too early for the babies to arrive, yet her body was clearly starting to labor. In that scary moment, Varvara knew she had to move quickly to save her unborn quintuplets. "Dima!" she called out, trying to keep her voice steady. "I think it's time." Dmitry Artemkin rushed into the room, his face turning when he saw his wife's worried expression. They quickly sprang into action, hearts racing. Varvara grabbed the pre-packed hospital bag while Dmitry collected last-minute items. The weight of 5 lives and countless unknowns pressed heavily on their minds. In a flash, they were in the car, racing towards the hospital. On their way, Varvara whispered prayers, begging for her babies to be okay. Dmitry's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his eyes darting between the road and his wife. As soon as they arrived, doctors and nurses surrounded Varvara. The room was a blur of activity, with machines beeping and people shouting instructions. Dmitry held his wife's hand tightly, feeling helpless as he watched the medical team work. Amidst the chaos, the medical team quickly determined that a natural delivery would be too risky for both Varvara and her 5 precious babies. Without hesitation, the decision was made to perform an emergency cesarean section. They informed Dmitry about their decision and he agreed with them. In a flurry of activity, Varvara was rushed to the operating room. Bright lights lit up the sterile space as doctors and nurses moved with practiced precision. Dmitry, dressed in scrubs, stood by his wife's side, offering words of encouragement. The surgical team carefully worked through Varvara's abdomen and uterus. Time seemed to stand still as everyone waited for the first glimpse of new life. Suddenly, a tiny cry pierced the air. "Baby A is out," announced the surgeon. In quick succession, 4 more cries followed as each baby was gently delivered. The NICU team quickly took each newborn for immediate care. As the last baby was delivered, tears of joy and relief streamed down Dmitry's face. The surgical team swiftly closed the incision to ensure Varvara's recovery. In the recovery room, exhausted but happy, Varvara and Dmitry listened as the medical staff explained the condition of her quintuplets. Though tiny and fragile, all 5 babies were fighting hard. Each newborn was incredibly small, barely larger than a hand, with delicate features showing their premature arrival. Dmitry stood by his wife's bedside, holding her hand tightly. He watched as his daughters were transferred into a specialized incubator. The rhythmic beeping of machines keeping his babies alive filled the air. For weeks, the hospital became their second home. Varvara and Dmitry spent every moment they could by the incubators, whispering to their girls, singing lullabies, and praying for them to grow stronger. Slowly but surely, the babies started to gain weight and breathe on their own. It wasn't easy. There were scary moments when alarms would go off, and doctors would rush in. But through it all, the Artemkin quintuplets showed they were fighters. They grew stronger every day, and everyone was amazed to see their progress. News of the quintuplets spread quickly. People all over Russia, and even in other countries, were fascinated by their story. When the day finally came for the family to go home, they were surprised to find a crowd of well-wishers waiting for them. The city had a special gift for the Artemkins, a big 4-room apartment. It was perfect for their growing family. As they settled into their new home, Varvara and Dmitry knew their adventure was just beginning. Caring for 5 babies at once was something Varvara and Dmitri had never experienced before, and their days turned into a carefully planned routine of feedings, diaper changes, and rare moments of rest. They quickly learned that teamwork was essential for their survival. Feeding time was incredibly challenging. With 5 hungry mouths to feed every few hours, Varvara and Dmitri developed a system. They lined up all 5 babies on a specially designed nursing pillow. Varvara would breastfeed 2 at a time while Dmitri bottle-fed the others with milk. This process could take several minutes, but only for them to start again shortly after. Sleep became a luxury they could rarely afford. The babies' schedules rarely matched, meaning a child was almost always awake and needing attention. Varvara and Dmitri took turns napping in short bursts, often sleeping in shifts to ensure someone was always ready to care for the babies. Despite the exhaustion, both of them cherished the quiet moments when all 5 girls were peacefully asleep. As the girls grew older, things became more challenging. Getting 5 toddlers ready for the day was chaotic. Before they knew it, it was time for the quintuplets' first day of school. Varvara and Dmitri stood at the school gate, holding hands and watching their 5 little girls walk in together. It was a proud moment, but also a bit scary. How would the other kids treat them? Would they make friends? They didn't need to worry. The Artemkin sisters quickly became the stars of their class. Their unique bond fascinated their classmates, and the girls soon had many friends. Of course, there were some tricky moments. One particularly challenging incident occurred when 3 of the sisters were placed in the same class while the other 2 were assigned to a different one. This separation caused anxiety and tears on the first day, as the girls were used to always being together. The parents and teachers had to work closely to help the quintuplets adjust to spending time apart during school hours. It took several weeks, but eventually the girls adapted, learning to balance their individual experiences with their special bond as quintuplets. As the years went by, the girls' personalities started to shine. Each of the quintuplets developed her own unique interests and traits. One became a natural leader, always looking out for her sisters. Another discovered a love for drawing and painting. One sister was the comedian of the family, always making everyone laugh. Another was the quiet one, happiest, with her nose in a book. And one of the girls had the voice of an angel, captivating everyone when she sang. When the quintuplets turned 7, Varvara and Dmitri decided it was time for a special trip. They were going back to visit the hospital where the girls were born. It was a big adventure for the family. Walking into the hospital was like stepping back in time. Some of the same doctors and nurses who had cared for the girls as babies were there to greet them. There were hugs and happy tears as the medical team saw how much the quintuplets had grown. "We never forgot you," one nurse said, smiling at the girls. "You were our little miracles." The trip was eye-opening for the quintuplets. For the first time, they really understood how special their story was. They saw pictures of themselves as tiny babies hooked up to machines. It made them appreciate even more how far they had come. Back home, life went on. The girls threw themselves into school and their hobbies with enthusiasm. Every Sunday, you'd find the whole family at church. The girls loved singing in the choir, their voices blending beautifully together. A big change came when Dmitri, the girls' dad, became a priest. It was something he had wanted to do for a long time. The quintuplets were so proud to see their father standing at the front of the church, leading the services. As the girls got older, they started to face new challenges. Sometimes people would stare at them when they went out together. Other kids at school would ask nosy questions or make mean